Welcome back, everyone. Now let's talk about object origins. What are they? Well, no matter what object we create in Blender, that object will have an object origin, often the center point of the object. If we open our default scene in Blender, we have three objects: a cube, a light, and a camera. As we select each of them, we can see a small orange dot in each one. This is that object's origin. You can also make the origin visible on all of the objects in your screen by going to our Right Properties panel, Hotkey N, scrolling down to Display, and checking All Object Origins. When you do, note how the origin points are highlighted even on objects that aren't selected. Which way you use that is entirely up to personal preference. Now, if your cube's still selected, great. Otherwise, let's select it. It is possible to move an object from its origin point and back to an origin point. But why would you want to? Well, many of the transform operations we do in Blender work in relationship to an object's origin point. So the location of the origin point can become very important. I'll demonstrate. In my scene, I'll tab into Edit mode, making sure to change my selection type to Make Visible. Let's move into Top View, Numpad 7, and go to Orthographic View, Numpad 5. I'll use the A key to deselect everything, then the B key to box select the right vertices. I'll pull those out to create a rectangle. Note that when I transform my object in edit mode, the origin placement remains the same. Let's tab back to object mode and see what happens. If I choose R for rotate and Y to lock the axis, we can see that my rectangle rotates around the origin point. Well, that's all well and fine, but what if I want my rectangle to rotate from its center? Well, I need to change its origin. Now, there's a hotkey to do this, but this is one of the few times where the hotkey may not be the fastest way to get it done. Nonetheless, that hotkey is Control-Shift-Alt-C. We see the dialog that pops up. In this case, we would choose Origin to Geometry, pulling our rectangle's origin point back to its center point. It's important to note that you may have to change or fix the origin point often with manipulated or especially edited objects. So really drill this in and experiment with different options for moving the origin. Now, rather than the hotkey, in this instance it's often easier to go to our right tool panel, hotkey T if you don't have it up, and simply select Set Origin for the option you want. But, Steve, you ask, would I ever not want the origin at its center? Well, sure, there are lots of reasons you may not want it centered. Let's look at a couple. If we look at the origin point on our camera, we can see it's not set at the camera's center. That generally makes manipulating it easier. But let's test a more visual way of displaying this. Let's hit Numpad 7 again, as well as 5. Let's scale our cube along our y-axis, and then along our x-axis to get this shape. Now, tabbing into Edit mode, let's pull our new shape a few Blender units to the right. Since we moved it in Edit mode, our origin is still at World 0. Now, let's tab back to Object mode. Let's duplicate our object, Shift-D, then hit R for rotate and Z for our axis to move our object along a rotation, being sure to hold Control so we can snap it to 90 degrees. Let's repeat that operation, Shift-D, then R and Z, and Control to snap, and end the operation. And then let's do that one more time. Now, as you can see, we have a nice array of objects that now all have the same origin point. For the sake of visuals, let's move back to a perspective view. Now, let's select all of the rectangles. With them all selected, let's choose R for rotate and Z for axis again. Now, if we move our cursor in a circular fashion, I'm willing to bet you're getting some ideas on how this can be useful. Alright, this time this will be less of a quiz and more just some questions I really want you to answer for yourself. Preferably you'll answer them out loud because all good artists talk to themselves out loud. Alright, what is the hotkey for origin transforms? What is the, in this case easier, location of the origin transform pulldown? Why would you often want your origin to also be at the center of an object? What are some instances where you might not? Alright, if you weren't able to answer the last two pretty easily with some ideas of your own, rewatch the video and get a little more familiar. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.